Welcome in to the first episode of Odd Man Rush. I hope you're all having a great holiday weekend wherever you may be. My name is Will Highland. You probably know me, and you probably know our co-host Kyle Diesel. But if you don't, you can catch both of us on Home Field Advantage and Filling Up, where this show will also be simulcasted. But for now, we are bringing a brand new podcast. If you want to read about it, just swipe up because we don't want to spend too much time talking about it. We're going to bring you hockey. It will be a fresh perspective. It'll be a south of the border perspective, and it'll be a perspective that you probably won't find if you turn on the four-letter network or go to any other mainstream sports website because, quite frankly, they don't give it the time of day. So that's why we decided to put this show together and give it the time of day that it deserves. So without further ado, I'll welcome in Kyle to the show. Kyle, the Devils fan in residence, what is up?
Not much. Enjoying the nice warm weather while it's stopping the rain right now. I'm enjoying taking in the rays best I can. How about you up in Maine there?
I'm doing the same thing. It's interesting we're starting a hockey podcast the night before the 4th of July here in the US. And, most of the time our minds aren't on the sport of ice hockey in the summer. But with the news we had, it's sort of been a good distraction from the fact that it doesn't feel like summer to begin with. And so what makes it feel like summer is that we had the NHL offseason really take off this past weekend. Otherwise, I think, if not for that, there's not a lot else going on in the sports world right now. So this is the taking the focal point. So things in Maine weather-wise suck. But good news is we've got this to distract us. Because Kyle, it's been a week. It began with the draft. And you and I were a couple of odd guys, odd man rush, so I don't think you and I buy a lot of the normal hype that goes on in the sports world, but with Connor Bedard, and if you guys watch Home Field Advantage and Filling Up, you know that I love props. So this was the magazine cover that I received. Because I'm a subscriber of the Hockey News. Shout out. Really cheap subscription. Because of the exchange rate, if you are interested in it. I have a bunch of extras too. Great magazine. They really put a lot of things in depth, but they have basically, and for good reason, the tagline says, "The wait is over, a new era begins." So they have anointed Connor Bedard essentially as the future of the NHL. Are you buying the hype on Mr. Bedard? I mean, he's young enough so that compared to us, I believe we would have been in first or second grade, maybe even third grade, and he wouldn't have been born yet.
Correct.
Probably you would have been in third grade. I would have been in second grade. And or as our friends up north call it, grade 2 and grade 3, and he wouldn't have been born. So that's how young he is. Do you buy the hype?
I mean, from what I saw stats-wise, yes, he is the next superstar. I believe he is. My only concern is I don't know if he'll be a stud right off the bat because going from where he played to playing in the NHL is two different animals.
Right.
I mean, I think he is going to be a stud. My big concerns I kind of brought up here are my two things. He has the skill, he has the talent, no question about that. But does he have the physicality and the strength to go forward in the NHL? As we see, my two things are you can compare him as people are comparing him as the second best number 1 overall pick behind, of course, McDavid.
Yeah.
And McDavid has lived up to the hype, through and through. And I think that's the kind of standard he's set at is he the next McDavid kind of thing. But my concern is, like I said, does he have the strength and does he had the physicality to play in the NHL, because it's either going to be he's going to be next McDavid, or he's going to be like next, like Jack Hughes, for example, because Jack Hughes everyone knew he had the talent, he had the skill, he had the talent, had the IQ, didn't have the strength and physicality, and it took him at least the first 3 years of his career to kind of get his foot in the door. That's my concern of him coming into the NHL, because these guys are big, especially if he makes the playoffs. There is no mercy on him.
Yeah.
So if one little injury is going to hurt him and take him out for the season, that's my major concern going forward. I do believe in the hype, and that's my concern going forward for him. So I don't know, what do you think about him in that overall? I mean, that's just what I think of him.
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off. I want to let you go there. I agree with you about the size. I think the size is a little bit of a question mark. I'm not going to call it an issue or concern yet, because there's been a ton of undersized, quote unquote, NHLers in recent years. I mean, Robertson with Dallas isn't a big guy. Even some of his contemporaries, like Brad Marchand, Sidney Crosby, some of the forwards in this league aren't huge. What's the kid up there in Montreal, Cole Caulfield? Had a lot of similar question marks regarding size. Now, here's the thing. It's kind of hard to knock a 17-year-old kid for size. When I was 17, I might have weighed 150 pounds soaking wet. So it's like kind of hard to, and I probably wore a size 29 waist, to be honest. So it's kind of hard to knock a 17-year-old kid for size, because he's going to go to the NHL. Do you think the Chicago Blackhawks aren't going to put him on a extreme strength program? I mean, Jake DeBrusk was pretty small when he came in the league. Now, I mean, that dude's buff and big and can throw his weight.
I mean, look at Connor McDavid. I mean, it took him some time. I mean, like I said, I think it's just going to take him some time to get where he's.
Take some time, and so I think, as you and I were talking about before we started recording, is he could end up playing the wing, and that's fine. That's fine. He might have a better, longer career potentially doing that, and he might be more versatile to a team if he learns how to play the wing in the NHL. Because I mean, this kid's probably been the number one center on every team he's been on since he was like 7 years old. I don't know the kid personally, obviously, but I've read about him, and he's been a highly regarded prospect, so it probably wouldn't hurt him to play on the wing. And your point about the WHL being different, obviously, than the NHL is valid. But you and I saw the stats. We saw the gap between him and the next best player in that league. And obviously, a lot of Canadians might have an opinion on that league versus some of the other juniors leagues in Canada, but the WHL has still churned out some pretty good players over the past few years. And it's churned out some really strong players, dating back. I mean, I think of Milan Lucic coming right out of the WHL and winning a Stanley Cup for Boston within 2 or 3 years. So I mean, it is a highly advanced league, no doubt about it. So but it's still a huge jump. What do you think about him fitting with the Blackhawks as a team, like, and rising to the expectations that he has?
I mean, I like it. I mean, it's original 6 NHL team. I think that I'm not going to say that it's rigged, but I do think it's great for the NHL in general, because you have an original 6 team getting back another firepower like Patrick Kane that the Blackhawks previous had. But you also get supporting cast of veterans who have been there for years. Like, you've got Hall, who they just signed this offseason. You've got
the trade with Boston. They got Foligno in that trade too.
Yeah, and they got Taves still on the team. So it's like they've got plenty of veterans around him to start building up. And they had the 19th overall pick. Bringing in Oliver Moore. So they've had 2 picks in the first round. So like they're pretty much going forward are going to be up and coming team. I don't see him doing anything spectacular this year, nor would I want to, as Chicago, want to be in the tender for playoffs right away
Yeah.
because that will hurt your future going forward. But they definitely have the forwards they need to help build up
Yeah.
Connor Bedard going forward. But the only question is for me going forward: do they have enough supporting cast defensively, being goaltending and
Yeah. I
defensemen
mean,
to
they still have Seth Jones
yeah.
up there signed long term. I don't think Taves has re-signed with him yet. So he's still a free
Okay.
agent. I'm not sure if he's going to come back, and I'm not sure if
I don't think Patrick Kane's going to come back either. I don't know. He might
no,
be
I
a
don't think
season
either one
injury.
of them will.
I think
They're moving on.
Well, I think he might have a career-ending injury from his hip injury, from what I've researched on what he potentially has to have done.
I haven't heard much about the Patrick Kane injury, but I know it's a huge question mark. It looks like Nick Foligno did sign
Yes,
because
Nick Foligno did sign. Yes, they
what
signed.
happened was they traded Hall. Hall was under the Bruins traded Hall. Hall's under contract for this year and
Yeah,
next. And
correct.
Foligno, we traded the rights. I say we, everybody, if you're listening for the first time, I'm a Bruins fan. The Bruins traded Foligno's rights, and so it was up to Chicago if they were going to sign him, and it sounds like they did.
Yeah.
And they got Corey Perry, who I believe you mentioned.
Yep.
And they brought in Ryan Donato. And so they've brought in some supporting cast offensively, but you're right. All those good Blackhawks teams of like when we were in high school and college, they were built with good defensemen as much as they were built with Taves and Kane.
Yeah, 2-star forwards is what it took them, with them defensively building around them, which will take time. No worries for that. But do you believe that since Connor Bedard is drafted, living up to hype, do you think he will have a huge impact on the NHL? And if so, how so? Would you compare it to McDavid, or would it be different?
Yeah, so I think that, and I'm going to call a few shots tonight. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Wayne
I
Gretzky.
think my one prediction about the Blackhawks, and you hinted at it a little bit ago, I think they are going to be a playoff team
this year.
Yeah. I think they're going to be a playoff team. They're not going to be like the first in the Central.
Wow. Are you calling wild card? Are you calling?
Yeah, they'll probably be a wild card or a number 3 seed in their division. I think about who's in that division. Nashville looks better. Minnesota, I don't know about them. They've had a lot of revolving doors. St. Louis, I'm not sure what they're doing. They look like a mess. Dallas will be good. So they will have to compete. It's not going to be handed to them, a playoff spot, especially with the way the West looks. They're in the mix, right? Like Calgary's going to be worse. Edmonton's going to be about the same. I think Seattle's going to be worse, and we'll have plenty of months to talk about the playoff picture. But just from a first initial, I think these veteran ads are going to make them better because Bedard's going to walk in, and he's going to have guys like Nick Foligno, who's played 1,000 games in the league, Taylor Hall, who was a former number 1 overall pick and a Hart Trophy winner and played junior hockey in Canada at a high level, is on that team. Ryan Donato, center, young guy, played college hockey, I believe. So has a little bit of a different experience in the draft coming up through. So all these guys, Corey Perry, an amazing career, played in the Olympics for Canada, all that stuff. All those guys are going to mentor him. So he's going to walk in, and not to mention Seth Jones, he's going to walk in and not have to be, for the first time in his career, the immediate focal point of a team because he has veterans around him. And it's going to be a tremendous learning opportunity, and it's going to allow him to thrive. He's going to be playing on a line with Taylor Hall, and I think it's going to make Taylor Hall better because, he had to play on the second and third line in Boston because we had Marchand and we had Pasternak and we had, the emergence of Shaka, and so he had no place to play. But I don't know. I think Bedard, the expectations of him in the NHL are going to be that he's going to be a perennial Hart candidate, which to be honest, the league desperately needs, because it's been too centric around McDavid winning that award. They might as well name it the McDavid Award. And I'm not taking anything away from McDavid, but like the more stars you have in this league, it makes the league better. And I think the expectations of the impact he's going to have is he's going to put a original six market, as you pointed out, back on the map. That franchise, and look, they had problems on and off the ice, and they've been a complete joke for years now. But they've got a ton of draft picks. They've got Bedard. They've got these veterans. They're playing in a city that cares about the sport. And I think it's a recipe for success. Not immediate success, excuse me, but I think that it could be a playoff team. That's my take. Mark it down, July 3rd, 2023. Mark it down.
All right. Well, mark it down.
Now, speaking of moves and younger teams bringing in veterans, your Devils bring in Tyler Toffoli. And I mentioned Calgary getting worse. This is one of the reasons. This is one of the moves that I think make them worse, but they had to do it. I think because they have to get assets for some of their expiring contracts next year. They traded Tyler Toffoli, their number one leading scorer from last season, to the New Jersey Devils. What do you make of that trade? What does that do? Because now you guys got Timo Meier, you got Tyler Toffoli. I would play both of those guys on the first line together. And so that immediately, I think, makes the New Jersey Devils a better team. What do you think?
Oh, I definitely do think adding him makes us a better team overall. That definitely amps up our first two lines. I yet don't know what line to put him on yet, because last year, since we added Timo, it seemed like chemistry was the issue going forward, like who gelled well with each other. And that's what happens. It was right at the trade deadline, basically trading him over. It's hard, it's hard to come over knowing which lines to play with, because you don't know how each player is going to play, what their skill level is at, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this is a perfect move right now, as we saw like with the Panthers when they got Matthews, that you saw that when they went to the playoffs, things look steady going forward. He had time to progress and work with the team. And I think right now this is the perfect move for them, especially for a young team having that. But I also think it's a huge kind of steal. Some people were saying it wasn't equal trade worth. I really don't think it was equal trade worth. I think the Flames should have definitely got a lot more for him.
Absolutely. Considering what they gave up to Montreal a couple of years to get him, they didn't give up a ton.
Correct. He was a consistent 20 to 30 plus scorer. Plus, I think it was like almost a 30 plus assist a game or per season. And that's huge. I mean, he's not really a goal scorer. He's more a facilitator, which is perfect because we're still missing in that for another line. Offensive. But I do think this helps, especially in the stacked Metropolitan Division going forward. I definitely think this helps, especially we have to go fight off the Canes as defending chance for the division. So I think that's the true test is, are these lines not going to be able to gel together moving forward?
Yeah. I just looked it up to get Toffoli, and I'm sorry, I'm looking up a lot of things because there's been a lot of moves. In February 2022, the Flames gave up two prospects who I've never heard of. So probably just, project guys. And they did give up a first, their 2022 first. But, I mean, that's the going rate for top six winger in these days with a hard cap.
Correct.
And
he's given a second and third round pick with that.
Yeah, they should have then, and then he was their top scorer. They should have got at least a second round pick back because they got a third round pick in Sharangovich, who's not horrible. I mean, he's still a decent player, but I thought they should have at least got one more draft pick. Maybe had made that third round pick a second round pick, and then maybe a late round pick next year. But I think the Flames whiffed on that trade. And with Toffoli and the Devils, one of the reasons I was looking away while you were going through, I was listening, and you were talking about chemistry and what he adds. I just pulled up Cap Friendly, and I looked at the lines for the Devils next year, and with Toffoli, I just moved a few things around. I think you could have Bratt play on his natural left side
Yeah.
as a second line left wing. Then you could have Timo Meyer play on his natural side as a left wing as well, with Hughes as your top line center, and then Toffoli on his natural right wing as your top line right wing. So now you've got Meyer, Hughes, Toffoli as your top line. Then your second line, you got Hischler there at 7.25 million a year. I hope he's playing second line center for that money.
Well, he was playing first line. You have the lines mixed up right now.
That's what they put in. And then I only moved the
Okay.
wings around. I didn't move the centers around.
Okay.
So they might do it based solely on money. The fact that Hughes makes more than is it Hischler or Heisler?
Heischer.
Heischer. Oh, there's no L.
Swede. It's one of our, I think, 3 or
The
4
print is so
Swedes.
small. Oh man. All right, everyone was probably like, who the hell is Will talking about? Anyway, Heischer. So the Swede, yeah, I would have him on the second line with Palat and Bratt, and you've got the Euro line there. And then you still got Eric Hall and Nate Bastian. So, I mean, that's a really good team. And then a lot of people think Dawson Mercer's going to play a lot this year.
Oh, he's been huge so far. Plus, we brought back Michael McLeod. This year. I mean, we did lose Miles Wood and a few other defensemen, but we defensively have a lot of first round draft picks of defensemen. So defensively, I think we're fine. And then
Colin Miller,
goaltending.
Goaltending is a little bit of a question mark, I think, after
it's a little bit of a question mark, but I'm not going to focus too much on that because one of them was a rookie basically this year, so I'm not going to worry too much about
that. So, I mean, your top six, Palat has won. Heischer, very good, signed for a lot of money in a long time, so I hope he's good. Bratt, very good, breakout year last year. Toffoli, best player on the Flames last year. He's now on your team. And then Hughes, we know the expectations of him. And then now Timo Meyer, who actually wants to play for the Devils. How does that feel, by the way? I'm not picking on you, but seriously, like, he could have probably gone anywhere he wanted. But you guys brought out the checkbook for him, and he wanted to be a New Jersey Devil. How does that feel?
Yeah, I think that speaks volume, especially for what you see going on around in the NHL right now with loyalty and how much compassion you have for a franchise. I think Tom Fitzgerald has done a great job bringing these players. But you forgot to also mention the rookie next year of Luke Hughes coming to play for us.
Yeah,
as he played to the end of.
They have him as your third line left shot defenseman. I wouldn't doubt if he moves up and plays with Marino rather than.
He'll play with Marino or Hamilton, I believe. Will be the two he'll play with.
You've also got Siegenthaler there at.
Siegenthaler. Yes, we still have him.
Jeez, these European names. I'm sorry. I'm just.
It's okay. I think we have basically a starting line of Swede. I think we have 4 or 5 Swedish players on our team, which is crazy, the most ever. But going forward with what you're talking about Timo and how he wanted to stay, I think that just shows loyalty and just how much compassion the team is bringing forth overall. I mean, look at what's going on in Toronto. You have Austin Matthews, who's still upset at what's going on there, if he wants to stay or not stay. Like, it just shows you, like, this team has something bright going forward, and it seems like majority of the stars they have brought in want to stay and stick around for what this is going to look like, which is kind of scary.
It is. I mean, I was looking at this. I just moved on the page, so I lost all the progress that I had looked at.
Yeah.
But there were a ton of guys there that signed at least 3 to 5 years out. You know, who are going to be on the team for at least 3 more years. Some of them even as long as 5, 6, 7, 8. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe call this my number 2 shot. Listeners, mark it down. New Jersey Devils will win a Stanley Cup within the next 3 to 4 seasons. By 2027, in this time when we are almost 30 years old, we will have you will go to a Stanley Cup parade, Kyle Diesel, before you turn 30 for the New Jersey Devils. That'd
be my second parade I would attend.
That's right. And because you grew up in the Stevens, Niedermeyer, Brodeur era, And now you're heading into the Hughes, Meyer, Hamilton, you name it era. So cool. Okay. Not only did New Jersey make a lot of moves, I
Mm-hmm.
think Nashville made some tremendous moves. I'm going to pull up their roster right now. Nashville was a borderline playoff team. They were struggling to get in. They did not get in, or did they?
They again they
No, the
failed.
Jets. The Jets got in last. It was the
Correct.
Flames, the Jets, the Preds, and it was the Jets that got in.
Who
So
did the Preds pick up this offseason? Remind me, refresh me at the current moment. So I
well,
search for my.
see, I had it loaded. The joys of technology. You actually sound like you took real physical notes.
Oh, I did. I mean, I
I'm
put that
relying on
thing.
the internet for everything. So if it goes to hell, then it's my fault.
So let me know what you pull up for what they
All
have
right. I've got their
signed.
roster. They
Okay,
got
well,
they brought in Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Knight.
that's okay.
Those
I
were the
like.
two big ones from day one.
Who did they first draft pick or first round draft pick this year?
They did, but I don't have their draft picks in front of me. In
I like the signings they have done so far. However, I'm a little bit worried if they have enough youth on that team. Cause I remember seeing them play live. They
Luke
did
Shen,
play
yes.
win. Um, but I do feel like they were a team that was like kind of like a roller coaster all year, kind of like ups and downs and like inconsistent. So I'm a little concerned going forward. But they also have a huge issue of goaltending. I don't think they're truly committed to who they have. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of nervous
Saros,
what they want to do going forward. Do they want to be that kind of mediocre team potentially making the wild card spot, or do they plan to rebuild? I'm kind of like in the middle of where they want to be.
yeah, so Saros is a weird animal because he had a good season in 2022, I want to say.
I
Last
think
season
so.
was a little bit um, you know, over. I actually think, did he get Vesna votes? I have no idea. He may have.
He might have.
I think he got Vesna votes. So even though like we were all overlooking him in this situation, there's question marks. He still got. I think he got Vesna votes last year. Um, but like beyond that, like I'm looking at their decor. Their top four is Roman Yossi, Tyson Berry, Ryan McDonough, and Luke Shen. Now, McDonough's not the same player he was. He's older.
Correct.
Yossi's still very good. Barry, he played really well in Edmonton because he was getting a lot of power play points. Luke Shen, a lot of people like Luke Shen. I think he's pretty good too. I'm not as high on him as others, but they brought him in. Then I look at their forwards, and it's their forward group that concerns me. It's not their goaltending or their defense.
Mm.
Gus Nyquist for 3.18 million, that's a lot. And I like Gus Nyquist, but I think he's better off as a like second line winger than a first line winger. And he's played a lot of his career in Columbus, in Detroit, when they weren't
Mm.
winning. So he's played some places where it's like, like, and I like the dude. The dude went to UMaine, was a stud for us up here. And then I look around the rest of their forward group, and there's some holes here. And granted, there's a lot of offseason left, and they have 8 million left in cap space still. But I still think they have to make one more move, I think, to really make them a surefire playoff team. Now, what that move is, I don't know. I think they need another winger or another center for sure.
Mm.
But I think they're going to be better, and I think they're going to knock on the door, much like Chicago is. That division is going to be better because the teams that have led that division for so long, like Minnesota and St. Louis,
Yep.
they're looking a little more patchwork each day that goes on, and we know what Dallas is and how good they are. But that Central Division, I don't know, man. Colorado is in the Central as
Dallas.
well, and so Colorado will obviously be there and be in the mix. Obviously, is probably the one or two in that division. It's Colorado and
And then you
Dallas.
got then you
But
got yeah, Dallas.
beyond those two teams, I mean, it's open for a door. If
Correct.
Minnesota isn't as good, you could see Chicago come in, or you could see Nash will come in. That's just, I don't know. You call me crazy, but that's what I see. All right, what do you think we head out east for a second and revisit Toronto and the Rangers? Those are two
Okay.
teams that disappointed this past offseason. We'll get to the Bruins in a second. Speaking of disappointments, we'll touch on it. Let's do
Which
Toronto,
disappointment do
Boston.
you want to start with?
Let's
Is the
do Toronto,
question.
Boston, New York in that order. We'll start with the Leafs. Um,
Okay.
so here's the interesting thing. I'll let you sort of divest on this further, but you have some problems with the way that Toronto is approaching their locker room.
Correct.
Elaborate on that for me, because the
Uh,
Leafs have so much pressure on them. They might as well be, a microwave. Like, that is how much pressure you've got on that Leafs team. So what do you think about their locker room? You mentioned loyalty earlier.
I mean, it just seems like, for what I've been seeing, what I'm hearing, I heard from other broadcasts, like saying, "Oh, great, they made it to the second round for the first time in what 5? They made it past the first round in like 5, 6 years, something like that. They made
Longer
it
than that,
consistently.
it's been almost 20.
20. Oh, well, see, that's huge. And it just seems like you have players coming out like Austin Matthews say, like, oh, I don't know if I want to stay another year. Like, we got to make another push. It's like you brought all these players, made these huge trades last year to make it further than the second round. Like, you can't just come up short. And Austin Matthews is just right in his prime right now. You're just letting it kind of like filter down. Like, you can do great all season. Just like look at what's going on with the Oilers and McDavid. Great all year. Still haven't made the Stanley Cup Finals. Like, it just comes a concern to me. Like, you can bring in as many studs as you want, like the Bruins did. And the Bruins have a better locker room leadership presence than I believe the Maple Leafs do right now. Like, they brought in, I think Tyler, what's his last name?
Bertuzzi.
Like, Patuzzi is a great fit for them. I think he can bring some of the leadership that the Bruins did have over to Montreal.
You mean Toronto?
Or Toronto, sorry. And they brought over Max Domi. I could be saying his name wrong.
No, you're not pulling a will. You're saying his name correctly. It's all good.
Okay, thank you. I think those are two great signs they brought in, but my issue wasn't really them scoring all last year because they did a great job in the playoffs. But they could put the puck in the net, especially when they were down. I think was it 3 or 4-1, and they came back, sent to overtime and win. My issue has been leadership with goaltending. Do they have that goaltender who can consistently show up night in, night out? Same defensively. Do they have players who can show up defensively night in, night out? Never really worried about their offense, but I also question who is their cheerleader. Austin Matthews doesn't seem like he's leading the team too well, nor does their current head coach. So I'm wondering if going forward next year, if this year they don't go further than the second round, or if they don't even make it, what does the future look like for them?
Yeah, so here's my thing on Toronto, and it will actually wave well into our Rangers discussion and our Bruins discussion, because these three teams, and we have one more team in the East I want to talk about first, but we got to rifle through this because this is very complex. But I just whipped up the Maple Leafs roster. As of right now, they're -3 and change, 3 mil and change in the cap. All right. So not only do they have these pressures of success and the desire for it converging on them from all sides, not only do they play in Toronto, which is the most hockey crazed city in the world, probably, they have so many guys signed for 10 million or more right now. And by so many, I mean 3. And that's, like, in my opinion, too many at this point with the cap the way it is. Austin Matthews, dude's going to be a free agent next year. All right. He is going to be. There's no way they can sign him during this season, before this season, to the contract that he wants to have, because they just don't have the cap space. So he's going to go into next season with the question mark of, is he going to resign? And it's going to mean that Nylander or Tavares or Marner are either traded or let go.
Well, I heard, just to cut in, I heard Nylander also potentially wants out, but only wants trades to contenders.
Right. And so the Maple Leafs, if they're good, and they're going to be good, right, there's no question that they're going to be good in the regular season, they're not going to move him.
No.
If they're good, they're going to ride it out. They're going to ride it out. And look, injuries happen, but I mean, I'm looking at this roster. This roster is very top heavy. It's very good at the top, but then there's a massive drop off in the third line. And
How
look,
many years do the top players have left in their contracts?
So Tyler
One or
Bertuzzi,
two?
they only signed to 1 year. Bertuzzi, and I mentioned to you in the text earlier today, he signed with the Maple Leafs because he knows the cap is probably going to go up. He just had 2 expansion teams deep in the playoffs. You had the Vegas Golden Knights expansion team win the cup. The league has more money than God right now, and they've gotten past COVID in a good way.
Yep.
The cap is going to go up. Bertuzzi knows that. He wanted a 1 year deal so that he could pad his stats by playing with Matthews and Marner on the first line, or at worst on the second line with Tavares and Nylander, and he's gonna get power play minutes. He's gonna get points. So you've got Bertuzzi there for 1 more year. You've got Matthews there for 1 more year. You've got Marner there for 2. You have Yarncroc there for 3. He's your second line left wing at the moment. You've got Tavares there for 2 more. He's making $11 million to play on your second line. That is
I can't believe he's worth that much for what he's been doing.
Now Pasternak makes around that on the Bruins quote unquote second line, but that's mostly a matchup thing because he played well with his fellow Czech Republic or Czechia teammates. And then you've got Nylander with 1 year left. And then you've got Domi on a 1 year deal. So you've got 7 forwards, and you've got Reeves on a 3 year deal, and I think that's actually good money for Ryan Reeves to play your third line. But you've got like 7 guys signed for $2 million or more, 3 guys signed for $10 million or more, and 4 guys signed for $5 million or more, all in your top 3 lines. Not to mention you've got TJ Brody and Morgan Riley and John Klingberg. They just went out and got John Klingberg as well. So they have invested in their defense. I can't even believe I forgot that. They've invested so much money in this team. But the problem, you want to know what the problem is, Diesel? Their goalie is Matt Murray, making $4.7 million to be.
That's what I saw, Matt Murray. I'm wondering, there's talks about him getting traded. Where do you move forward with him, and what?
I don't know what you do. Though. I don't know what you do. Because
I think he got hurt though last year, right? I think he missed some time.
He did miss a lot of time. They had Campbell the year before. Did they have that? Was it Mrazek? What was his name? What was that? It wasn't Mrazek. What was their other goalie that they randomly had last year? Oh, Samsonov.
Yes, that's it.
And like, he's nowhere to be found this year. I don't think he's coming back. He's not on this list, so that means he's not signed.
And there's not like there's a big chart of goaltenders that are free agents either.
They also have Jake Muzzin, who as a defenseman on LTIR, making 5.6. So they have so much money tied up in this team. I don't think they can afford to go out and
they can't afford to make any changes, nor can I think they can afford to sign many of these guys even back next year.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Like, Matthews is going to go out and make 14 mil next year or 13 mil. He's going to do it.
I think he'll play for another contender, though. He won't play for another team that doesn't have a shot.
I mean, like I said with the other thing, we got 11 months to talk about where Matthews is going to go.
True.
Who knows? I think there's a team about 200 miles to the northeast, maybe more than 200 miles, probably like 400 miles to the northeast. A little bit more French there than they do in Toronto. And they would love to have Austin Matthews. So I'm just going to float that out there right now. We have plenty of time to talk about that. All right. So Rangers real quick. A lot of the same deals. Same concepts as with the Maple Leafs in terms of the pressure that they have on them. But what's your take on the Rangers?
Well, they did fire their head coach. Who did they bring in? Do you remember who they brought in this year?
I
I
don't know.
forgot the. They
I
brought in a
don't
new
know the team.
coach.
I'm a
I
horrible hockey podcaster. I'm a
um I mean I forgot to write it down. I was going through so fast. So they brought a new coach. I think that's a great start because you saw things were a mess last year. By third, first of all, I did think like we talked about earlier in our
Oh, it's Peter
podcast
Laviolette, of
about
course.
hockey.
It's Pete Laviolette.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think it's a great pickup if things work out so far for him. But I do think the issue for them last year is when they made those big trades for the trade deadline. I think they were much better before. Bringing in, like we saw, too much talent that didn't have much time to gel. Didn't pan out for them. I do think losing Vlad and Kane. I think losing Kane doesn't hurt too much. Yet again, people say because he is a star, he's a great superstar. But I think he is there up in age. I didn't see him progress too much. But losing Vlad is the huge question mark going forward. Is it worth letting him go or not? Because we saw in the playoffs, he didn't show up at all against the first round against the Devils. So I wonder if what they're going forward to do, because they also don't have much cap space left.
No, they have
Because
$6 million to work with. That's nothing.
yeah, it's not much, but they are defensively. Defensively, they are. I know that offense, like we saw play last year, that was issue. They couldn't eat offense go. They were in their zone a couple times. A few makes me think defensively they'll be fine.
I did too. I mean,
Uh,
Adam Fox and
but
Lion Ringren are great.
question them bringing Quick in. I get it. He's a veteran goaltender. Yes, I'm just wondering why bring Quick in. I mean, again, he's a veteran. I assume he'll bring something to Shesterkin, but it just leads me to question. Shesterkin is a great goaltender. I'm just worried that
I think
New York's going to waste him like they did with Lundqvist. Is he going to be another goaltender that goes to New York and just doesn't win a cup? You have a great defense and a great goaltender, but you waste it.
I didn't even know they brought in Quick until you said that. I mean, there's just been the Rangers have done a lot of things. They brought in Blake Wheeler as well.
Yeah, they just brought him in. They brought what was it? Pitlick. They brought a lot of depth in from what I saw for their forward position. So I'm kind of worried
spend
about
a lot of so they only spent $825,000 on Jonathan Quick. The dude's won 2 Stanley Cups and a Conn Smythe.
Correct. Was he like 36, 37?
Yeah, but like here's the thing, Diesel. Like they're still gonna probably ride Shesterkin for 55 games.
Correct, but I'm worried for his like longevity of him just wearing out.
Well, I think that's why they brought Quick in, because Quick, even at his age, can take pressure off of Shesterkin to play the Thursday night game against the freaking, Arizona Coyotes out west, right before you fly to Vegas. Like he's gonna do that so that Shesterkin doesn't have to. So, I mean, that's all. I mean, I look at this roster, and you did cut out for a second on my audio, but I agree with you about their defense. I'm not worried about their defense. Trouba, Fox, Lindgren, good, all good. Their forwards, even without Kane and Tarasenko leaving, most likely, you still got Mika Zibanejad, Panarin, Kreider, Trocheck, Kako. I mean, they've got some guys to work with. I'm not worried about them. I still think they're not the best team in that division. I'll get to, I think you guys are better, and I think the Hurricanes are better, and I'll get to Hurricanes in a second because I have a prediction to make about them. But real quick, the Bruins. We're running out of time here, and I still want to do our oddball segment. Bruins, I don't have to pull up the roster. I know what they did. Oh, see, that's my timer to move on. Oh, whoops. Right, so Bruins. I don't mean, I'm not freaking out about the Bruins. So I could talk for 2 hours about this right now, but I think we'll have plenty of time to talk about the Bruins. Right now, they did some things. They did some things that people are going to point and laugh at them for, right? They bring in Milan Lucic. Everybody knows Milan Lucic is over the hill. Everybody knows that. Yep. They didn't bring him in to be 2013 Milan Lucic. They just didn't do that. They brought him in because they needed a cheap veteran on the fourth line to fill minutes, the same way that you had guys in the past do that on this Bruins team. Guys like Curtis Lazar, and who's I think now a Devil, if I'm not mistaken. So you do that.
Correct.
All right. They bring in Kevin Shattenkirk. Is Kevin Shattenkirk the same player he was in 2014? Absolutely not. Are they relying on him to be that player? No. That's what McAvoy and Lindholm are for, who are much younger, obviously, and they're in their primes. They bring in James Van Riemsdyk. Oh my God, James Van Riemsdyk, he's 34 years old. He's not the same player he was. They know that. That's why they still have Zacha and Pasternak and Jake DeBrusk under contract. You know, like, they know these things. They're not stupid. They understand that. But you want to know what all these little moves are doing? Even bringing in Morgan Geekie or Patrick Brown on the cheap or any of these guys?
Tell us what it's doing.
It's setting the Bruins up as a bridge, Kyle. The Devils last year, you thought it was going to be a bridge year until all your guys matured. You guys ended up overperforming and were a great example of a team in a quote-unquote bridge year over succeeding. Now, do I think the Bruins are going to be as good as the Devils were last year? No, they're not even going to be. They obviously will never be as good as they were in the regular season last year, ever. But people have been beating the drum of the Bruins in decline for so long. But this setup is for a bridge year. They bring in low risk, high reward veteran players who Boston is a free agent destination. The fact that they'll be on the Bruins makes these guys affordable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would have loved for them to go out and get Oliver Ekman-Larsson, but he wasn't going to sign for the same money that Kevin Shattenkirk signed for. And so now you have a bridge year where next season, a year from now, they're going to be probably 27, 28 million in cap space. That's going to be enough to overhaul this roster because at that point, you will still have Pasternak, Zacha, Coyle, Marchand, who I didn't even mention, and all the rest of their stars, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, under contract. So you'll be able to rebuild this roster. Bruins fans, for some reason, we love to talk about our history, but we also have a wicked short memory. 2016, this team looked like it was heading off a cliff. They missed the playoffs. They were trading guys. They traded Lucic, actually.
I remember that.
And then guess what happened? The next year, they end up with a new coach. They've got some kids playing. They've got cap flexibility. Next thing you know, 2 or 3 years later, they're competing for the Stanley Cup again. And in 2018, they won a round and had one of the best records in the league. So the team is able to move and retool. The Bruins don't rebuild. We just don't rebuild. There's no need to rebuild. Free agents want to come here. We don't have to grow everything from the ground up. There's this misconception among Bruins fans that we have to, quote unquote, plan for the future. Why? We have a core already. We have Pasternak signed for 7 more years or 8 more years or whatever it is. You have Lindholm signed. You have McAvoy signed. Marchand, yeah, whatever. Okay, he's still got 2 or 3 more good years on him. Why, this idea that they're just awful is stupid, that they're going to be awful is just stupid. That's not what they've done the entire time Cam Neely has been president of the team. They've consistently fielded, at worst, a competitive playoff level bubble team. Even the years they didn't make the playoffs, the only 2 since 2007, were 15 and 16. Both of those years, they were still right on the edge of the playoffs and going into the last week. So it's not like this team has ever bottomed out and just decided to go full rebuild. I just don't think that's necessary. So
no, I agree. I agree with you on that. It creates
a bridge.
I agree with you on that. I do think they've got the talent around them. They've got the young stud goaltender there. I do think how the season ended was awful. I just think that how you have a new coach coming in, it just didn't seem like things panned out well. You should have made a goaltender switch, especially if those injuries were that high your current starting goaltender, to have had that, to have him play all 6 games.
Yeah.
There's a really downfall that you just got outplayed by the Panthers. It wasn't like the Panthers were better; they just wanted it more at that point.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing: you talk about wanting it more. I mean, veterans, when they come to the Bruins, I mean, I've seen this. I mean, you've seen this for years as well. Just following hockey is sometimes these veteran players come in and they're just hungrier, right? Because
Yeah,
the young guys are hungry too, but these veterans like Shattenkirk has had a good career. Van Riemsdyk has had a good career, but I honestly don't know how many playoff rounds collectively they've won.
correct.
Lucic comes back because he wants to retire a Boston Bruin. All right, Bergeron, we'll see what happens with him. But even if Bergeron doesn't come back, you still have young players that you can mix in with these veterans. See, what so many Bruins fans wanted us to do, and I just don't get it, is they wanted the Bruins to just like bottom out, play a bunch of minor league 4A players or whatever, you want to call them. That's what we call them in baseball. And then be what the Red Sox are, a meddling team that doesn't know if their young players are good yet. Well, what you can do is you can still be competitive with veteran all-star players who have been good before. I still think that they're not going to win their division, I don't think, but they'll compete for a playoff spot at the very least. It's more than you can say about some of the teams in town recently, Patriots, Red Sox. And they're going to be a respectable product. And then in the meantime, they can give John Beecher and Fabian Lysell and all these other prospects time to actually see the league when injuries happen and not have to feel like they have to carry the team on their own. It's a good recipe, and I don't understand why everyone's so negative about it. Like, they're going to have $27 million in cap space next year. That's awesome. I don't know why we're raining on that. So, I mean, what did they, like, Bertuzzi, great. Apparently, they wanted to sign Bertuzzi to a one-year deal, knowing that the cap would go up and that they were constrained. And Bertuzzi didn't want a year, didn't want a one-year deal. Well, it turns out he did, because he went and signed one. So, like, whatever. Bertuzzi's from Ontario. Maybe he just wanted to play for the Leafs. So, I'm not. Everyone's freaking out about the Bruins and they're going to be AARP with all these old players. Dude, next year when Fabian Lysell is your second line right wing and, John Beecher's your third line center, like, you're going to feel pretty good, going into it. So, or, when you've got Mason Lowry playing, like they're going to be okay. But lastly, before we get to our 2 wild cards, so much for the 45-minute podcast, dude, but we're just going to roll with it. The thing that I want to talk about is one more team. It's the Carolina Hurricanes. I think the Carolina Hurricanes are going to win the Stanley Cup in 2024. Mark that down. I'm going to stick with this. I think I'm going to hold to it for like the next 11 months as best I can. And I know we got a big Canes fan that listens who's going to love this, but I think they're going to win the Stanley Cup next year. But before I lay out my reasons, what do you think about what they've done? They had a ton of cap space, talking about a team with cap space. They still got more.
To what they had last year, they had this previous playoff one from what they had was extraordinary. And I think what they've done this offseason is address those issues that they currently were lacking in the playoffs that caused them to lose to the Panthers. And do you think that, like you said, they are probably in the East, they're probably the team to currently beat, I would think, going into the season right now. I think they are the team. They brought back, I think they signed Anderson back at goaltender. I mean, they've already got 2 other young goaltenders that are going to be great as they develop through the season. They're still going to be great. Defensively, they were a menace with Burns, but also I think the style they played their game and what they have signed for this offseason is what's going to drive them to be successful again this year. I don't have exactly who they signed except for Anderson. I think they signed Fast back or did
They
Fast
got
leave. I can't
they
remember
got
if he
Fast,
was.
and they've got Dmitry Orlov,
Yep,
with
he
their
came back.
big.
Yep, another defenseman with Burns. So I think defensively they're going to be studs for the way they play their style of offense, dumping the puck in, firing the puck from the point is how they played last year. And sometimes they'll play defensively if they get the stop, get a good rebound, head out of the zone for an odd man rush. The other way they play it. I think they have addressed their issues and still have plenty of money to spend if they wish.
Yeah,
But like you said, I do think they'll be a true contender. I can't say if they are going to win the Stanley Cup yet or not. I'm going to wait to see how this offseason still pans out.
yeah. I am listening. I'm just looking at this roster as you've been going through the names, and um, I don't know why I had to tell you I was listening. Obviously, we're having a conversation, but I was just like, I was as you were going through the names. I'm thinking about it. You're right about the goaltending. Anderson's your
Mm-hmm.
veteran, but you've got Ranta, you've got
I think he got sick
Kochikov.
slash injured in the
Yeah,
playoffs.
you've got the young guy there. I just scrolled by his name. Piotr Kochikov. I probably just ruined that guy's name, but it's all right, dude. Promise. No hard feelings. But here's one thing that as you were going through the roster, I was like, somebody's missing, and it's because Andrei Svechnikov was hurt for most of the second half of last season. And so I'm
Correct.
looking
They
at
had
this team
two or
now.
three guys that were out with like an
Yeah.
season-ending injury.
And Max Pacioretty was as well.
Yeah.
But the moves they made, their top six is as good as really any in the league right now. It
Correct.
really is. You're gonna end up having to play somebody on their off wing, whether that's Svechnikov, Bunting, Stahl. If he doesn't play center, like you're gonna have to have. They've got a lot of centers on their roster.
I think Stahl will move. Stahl's kind of turned into that role player, and he's kind of accepted that role just because of his age now. So I think he'd be the one who moves. But like, I think their first two defensemen, like, holy crap, how do you get past
Dmitry Orlov and Brent Burns?
Yeah, how do you get past those front two?
Not to mention Pessing and Slavin are a lot of teams would be a top pairing.
Correct. They'd be their top four basically right there.
This is why they're going to win the Stanley Cup is because they're so big, and they're due. They're so due, and they know they're running out of time. They're going to be like the Bruins last year. Like they know they're running out of time, and if they've got space at the deadline and can make a move, they're going to make a big move. I don't know who that is, but like Aho's going to be a free agent next year if they don't re-sign him. So if they want to win with him, this is their year. And their top six, Teravainen, Aho, Marty Nietzsche, Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi, who's one of the most underrated players in the league, Bunting, not to mention Seth Jarvis and Fast on the wing, Stahl, Martinuk. Jack Drury is a young player. I think he'll be pretty good. And that's just their forwards.
Just remember, they didn't make any moves last year before the playoffs. They're like one of the only teams that didn't make a move.
Yeah,
and look how
didn't they? No, they brought in somebody, didn't they?
I didn't think they made any big moves like every other team did in the East.
Remember.
But I think that played a huge part for them to be successful because, like we talked about, is that team chemistry being important. If things are clicking, don't change what's working.
Yeah, I mean, they made it to the conference final without two of their best players.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem like they need to really change too much of who they are.
I don't think so. All right, dude. That's my prediction. Carolina Hurricanes win Stanley Cup.
All right, I wrote that. Noting that.
So write that down. You had mentioned the new women's league that's beginning. Tell us a little bit about that because a lot of us know about the PHA and the merger that happened a little while ago. Like, what's different about this league?
Yes, so it's being. Don't quote me on it. I can't remember the full article from on the side. But I think it's two of the tennis owners who worked with Billie Jean King for tennis have now signed a deal with the women's NHL, which previously was being battled with two other big named companies or people. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think this is huge for women's hockey because if they're able now to work more with the NHL in person, now maybe they can kind of do like a minor or not minor, but like matchups that they do for the NBA, but the women's NBA and the NBA teams
Yeah.
kind of have like in the same cities, areas, and kind of like counterpart each other and working off each other because there are some pretty damn good, talented women NHL players. I'm not gonna lie,
Oh,
and I think
I mean, Marie Philip Poulin might be one of the best female athletes of our lifetime, and almost zero
correct.
people know who she is.
But I could never. I don't think I could ever see a women's NHL game because I had no idea where to look because I couldn't find it on ESPN or anything.
A lot of times it's streamed, and actually talking about a Boston hockey team that dominates, the Boston Pride.
Yeah.
And it was actually the PHF. I said the PHA. See, that's my own ignorance there. I knew there was a merger that happened a little while ago. But now you've got the it's basically, I'm reading up on this merger. This is going to be a huge merger. And
huge, and I think it's huge for hockey in general.
Yeah, definitely. And they've grown. They've added a new team pretty much every year. Starting with their original teams were the Pride, the Buttes, the Whale, and the Riveters. Now you've got the Minnesota Whitecaps, the Toronto Six, and the Montreal Force. That's going to be pretty cool. The Bruins and the Wild are already partner teams, so hopefully that will continue because that is cool. Like, one of the greatest rivalries that I've seen in my lifetime is the USA and Canada in women's hockey and how good.
Correct.
And we're going to get to USA Canada men in a second, but on the women's side, like, they've had
talk about
barn
legacy of.
What was that, Diesel?
Talk about legacy of hockey or sports in general, just the USA versus Canada women's hockey teams.
Yeah. They've been so good. There was one game, I think it was the 14 gold medal game, where I still think the 2010 men's gold medal game between the two countries is the best hockey game ever played. But the 2014 women's gold medal game in Sochi was pretty close because what happened was the U.S. had a lead, a 1-goal lead with like seconds to go, and they missed an empty netter. It slid by, and then it wasn't icing, but I don't believe. But Canada got the next draw, and they ended up scoring late to tie the game and then winning the game in overtime. So they took the gold medal essentially off the necks of the American girls or women, who were led by, I mean, some of them were so young they were practically girls at the time, and that's how long this rivalry has been going on. But that was really the last big hurrah for Megan Duggan. And then 4 years later, the United States got revenge when Jocelyn Lamoureux, I believe was her name. I hope I'm not messing that up. She got the shootout goal to win it for the United States. I'm gonna fact check that because now I'm self-conscious.
Fact check it.
But they've been so good. Both at just dominating and finding their way to the big games together. Let's see. Oh, there's twin sisters. See, I knew. Here we go. Hold on. Jocelyn has been to the Olympics 3 times, 2010, 14, and 18. Team USA won silver in 10 and 14 and a gold medal in 18, all 3 tournaments skating against Canada. In the gold medal game of the 2018 Winter Olympics, Jocelyn scored the game-winning goal in the first extra round of the shootout after the after the preliminary 5 rounds. So
Mm.
I was right. Jocelyn Limro. So there's some great tradition there, and I really want to see that sport continue to grow because it's a great sport to watch if you see it at the Olympics. And I mean, it's fast. They're fast. Those women are
Correct.
fast. All right. So speaking of USA Canada, I'm gonna wrap up the show here. Sorry guys, we're going a little long, but this is what you're gonna get from us. If you haven't listened to us before, we're prone to do this. He and I can talk about sports for decades on end. It feels like actually Diesel. Yesterday was our 8-year, so not decades. We haven't known each other a decade. But yesterday was our 8-year Facebook friend anniversary.
Wow.
I can see the gray hair forming.
I have a couple grays coming in apparently. So
Yeah. All right. So here's guys, we wanted to do this because if you're watching on YouTube, you can see my patriotic shirt. We're both Americans. I live in Maine. We have the second longest border with Canada of any state. Only Alaska has a bigger border. I know Michigan claims to have a bigger border, but most of that's lake, so I don't count it. We have the second biggest border with Canada of any state. I have family that live in the Great White North. Diesel is from a border state. Technically, he's from New Jersey, but he's lived in Vermont for a while. That's a border state. And I actually work in a town that I think outside of Montreal is the most, at one point, outside of Montreal, it might have been the biggest French immigrant city in the French Canadian immigrant city. So I guess Montreal is a native, so it wouldn't count. But it was a big city, and we had Louis Domingue had a lot of French Canadian immigrants, and was the only. Oh, this was the stat. It was the only United States team that had United States city that had a team in the Quebec Major League. So we've got some. What we're trying to say here is we have some cred, and we're not just going to come at this from a biased American perspective, despite my shirt. So Diesel, why don't you give me your Team Canada? And this is the best 5 lineup. This is the best lineup: 3 forwards, 2 defensemen, and a goalie that were Canadian, versus the best American lineup of the same makeup. And I'm sorry if I completely butchered that intro and everyone's like, what the hell is he talking about? French Canadian immigrants and border states and land use and teams. But long story short, we made fantasy teams. So go ahead and give me your Canada team, and then I'll give you mine.
my Canada team is made up of currently of all young studs. All right. So if this could happen, if the NHL would allow all players to play, my current starting forwards would be for Team Canada: Connor Bedard,
Ooh,
Connor McDavid.
ooh, that's a slam dunk.
That's a slam dunk. And then I went with Tyler Tufale. I'm saying his name wrong. I'm sorry. Centered, because you already have Connor Bedard and Connor McDavid. You need a playmaker in the middle. He's a guy who will facilitate the puck for them.
So you got Tyler Toffoli on a line with those two. Interesting. That's a good way to look at it. I think he's naturally a winger, but you could move them around.
I can move them around, but I figured I can't have 3 studs at once because I don't want that to happen. You need someone who can manage them. Then I got Cody Glass in my backup. He's my playing guy. So for my defense, I've got Brett Burns.
Oh,
he's probably
good pick.
the oldest guy I have in my current Canadian team I have as my starting lineup. And then I kind of went between Tyson Barrie and Cale Maker as my second defenseman, Team Canada.
Yeah, so I think it's Makar, Cale Makar, and I that's who I'd pick. He's won the Norris last year and the Calder and a year before and a Conn Smythe and a Stanley Cup. The dude is the definition of a stud.
And then at my goaltender, I have Devin Levi as my starter.
All
He's
right.
an up for Buffalo, so that's who I picked.
So I'll
My
give you
stuff.
my Canada roster. And guys, I guess the other reason why we're doing this is because Canada just had their holiday on Saturday, and we have ours tomorrow. And so this is a good time to do this. We'll try and do more things like this at the end of the podcast after we talk about the NHL to kind of expand and do more things. So I think
I was
this
gonna
is
say
fun.
there's a lot more teams that are getting up, or countries, a lot more better players coming up to watch out
Right,
for hockey.
for sure. And Germany, Switzerland, all over the place. Finland.
Correct.
So I'll give you my Canada roster and then we'll go over the US. So I've got
Okay.
McDavid. I've got McDavid playing in the center.
Have to have him. Has to automatically be first line.
Yep. I've got Huberdeau playing left wing, Jonathan Huberdeau.
Okay.
Because he's just, I think he underachieved last year. He might have overachieved the year before, but I
He
think
did overachieve the year before.
if he's not a the guy, like in Calgary, I think he had to be the guy. It's interesting how you had Toffoli and I have Huberdeau. And they played a lot of time together last year and
They played together.
Didn't always work. But I got Huberdeau. I think McDavid goes without saying. And then I think on my right wing, I'll move Steven Stamkos over to my right wing.
Okay, I like that.
Because Steven Stamkos has been there, he's won. All right. The only thing he hasn't done is won in the Olympics because I believe he was injured in 2014. 2018, they didn't go, and then they didn't go in 2022 either. So he's won a lot, but the only thing he hasn't won is an Olympic gold medal. Not that this was the Olympics, but you know where I'm going. All right, then I've got Cale Makar. I think Cale Makar is the best non-forward in the league, and for that reason, God has to be in there. And then I've got Alec Pietrangelo. I mean, the dude just won a cup.
True.
The dude is good. He's a veteran leader, veteran leadership presence. Now, you threw in a fourth forward. I'll do the same. Speaking of guys that win and have a veteran presence, give me Sidney Crosby as a fourth forward.
I like it.
Give me the leadership up front. Give me the guys that have done this and been there. So yeah, give me, and then give me his teammate Tristan Jarry as my goaltender. There's not a lot of great Canadian goaltenders.
I like that.
I gotta say, but Tristan
he did have a slump year last year, though. Yep.
So he's streaky. He's a little feisty. You can get under his skin. He's a little bit of a firecracker. No pun intended. But I think he can be somebody who is very streaky, but can rise to the occasion in the moment. So give me Tristan Jarry. Now I'll just quickly do my Americans, and then I'll let you get the last word with your Americans. So down the middle, give me Austin Matthews, best American-born player, I think, of our lifetime, outside of possibly Kane. I think it's down between Patrick Kane and Austin Matthews, in my opinion, of our lifetime. Obviously, all time, you'd probably say Roenick or Modano or somebody like that. But I've got Matthews as my one center. My left wing, interesting. I'm keeping the Calgary Flame. I'm going to keep the Calgary Flames theme going. You've got Toffoli. Okay. Give me Johnny Gaudreau, the former Calgary Flame. Give me Johnny Hockey as my first line left wing. Then on the right, give me his former teammate that he scored 110 plus points with in Calgary in 2022. Give me Matt Tkachuk. The dude is a pest. He'll get under your skin. He'll be the physical presence, and he'll still score some goals. Trust me, I'm a Bruins fan. I know. And then speaking of the Bruins, I'm on a roll here, dude. Give me Charlie McAvoy on defense. He'd probably have to play his left side. But give me Charlie McAvoy. And then on the other pair, or on the other side of his pair, give me Adam Fox. Guys won a Norris. And I think was drafted by the Calgary Flames. So I'm keeping that going.
I think you're right.
And the dude plays hard. He plays in New York. He understands the pressure and is just a great two-way player. And then, all right, I think I might ruffle a few feathers here. Give me my guy Jeremy Swayman in that Anchorage, Alaska. from the Northwest, from the Arctic. Give me Jeremy Swayman, the pride of both Anchorage, Alaska, and the University of Maine, and my Boston Bruins. I'll take Jeremy Swayman in a big game when they're wearing that number 1 on his sweater with the USA on the front. I'll take that. Give me Jeremy Swayman. And I think we have a pretty kick-ass team. So that's my United States team. Gaudreau, Matthews, Tkachuk, McAvoy, Fox, Swayman. And then if you are making me choose a fourth forward, I wasn't really prepared for that. But I'm going to see if I can think of a guy off the top of my head here.
There's plenty of options out there.
What about the other Tkachuk brother? Brady?
Yeah,
he's American, right? Because I think their dad played in Canada at the time, so maybe one of them was accidentally born there. I have no idea. But if Brady Tkachuk is American, give me Brady Tkachuk just because I can't think of another guy right now. I mean, if this was 5 or 10 years ago, I would obviously have chosen Patrick Kane or your boy Zach Parise. Or maybe I would take Mike Eruzione out of the retirement home. Love that guy. Actually, I met Mike Eruzione a couple weeks ago. The dude certainly doesn't play hockey professionally anymore. If those of you don't know, he was the captain of the Miracle on Ice team. Yeah, maybe I'd take him in his prime. And give me no. You know what? Rizzo, Mike Eruzione, he's my coach. He's my coach. Okay. Mike Eruzione is my coach. I'm going with that. All right. What are your Americans?
So my forwards, I have similar to you. I have Austin Matthews, and I have other counterpart at wing with the other Matthews there, Tkachuk. So we've got a stack forward, and then at center, I've got 2 centers actually. I've got Jack Eichel as my starting center, just because this year was the Knights.
I forgot about Eichel. Yeah, I know. He's probably my.
I know we had to about how he played this year. Spectacular. My fourth winger, of course, it's got to be Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes has to be there. I cannot name the non-Devil player up there.
So you've got Hughes, Matthews, Tkachuk, and Parise. Eichel.
Yep.
All right, I like that. And who's your defenders?
My defenders are similar to you. I've got Adam Fox and Charlie McAvoy as my 2 starters, and then my third would be John Carlson.
Oh, okay. If we're adding a third D-man, I like that.
Mm-hmm. And then my goaltender would be, I have no idea if I'm saying his name right, Demko.
Thatcher Demko from the Canucks. Yeah.
Yes, would be my goaltender from USA.
Yeah, he's pretty good. Oh, I thought you were going to take Connor Hellebuck because he's very good as well. But I mean, I just look at the Winnipeg Jets and I'm like, I don't know if he's ever really played in a big game.
That's what I was concerned about. I was like, I'm thinking him, but I do think the Canucks had a better overall progression.
Yeah, the Jets made the playoffs and the Canucks were a dumpster fire. But I see where you're going with Thatcher. I think he's younger and there's a little bit of a linear trajectory.
More of an upside to him.
Yeah.
Plus, if you surround him with studs, I'm pretty sure he'd play a lot better.
Oh, yeah. If you had a defense in front of him of McAvoy and Fox, let alone Zach Werenski or Seth Jones and John Carlson are all American defenders who are all good. And then you've got the younger Hughes there, too.
Quinn Hughes?
Yeah.
Luke Hughes?
Actually, he played in front of Demko in Vancouver. Whatever. Don't let facts get in the way of a good story. Yeah, I think that's a good roster. I still think Canada beats us. They just they're deeper. But
yeah, I mean, I just don't think they have quite. I mean, I think either way it would be a shootout, especially with how much open ice they'd play on the open rinks, how much bigger they are, and try to contain Connor McDavid or Connor Bedard in that kind of ice situation. Not possible.
No. All right. I'm going to ask you to send me. This is a great segue into the end of our show. Please send me these in written form so I can post them on our social. And and see what people think about. I'll just name it Team 1 and Team 2. And if they want to know whose team it is, they'll have to listen to the show. But if you're listening to the show now and you haven't gone and voted by now, head on over and vote on whose team would win in each of our my Canada team versus your American team, or your American team versus my Canada team, who would win. And between the two. And then that will be a fun way to spend your 4th of July. So that's going to do it, dude. So much for our 45-minute show. Going forward, they probably won't be as long as this, but we had a lot we wanted to fit in our inaugural show. If you haven't listened to us before, you can follow us on Instagram at HomefieldPod. That's where our main, or my main podcast is. We also have Filling Up with Kyle Diesel, which is simulcasted. And you can catch up with now this show as well on that Instagram page. So you can catch us, if you're not sick of us by now, after an hour and a half, you can catch more of us over there. So please go ahead and do that. And right now we're only on Spotify, but if you head on over to the link in my in our Instagram bio at HomefieldPod, you can catch all of our other podcasts and subscribe for when it does hit your provider. So if we're not on your favorite provider yet, it's going to take a little bit of time because we're a brand new show, but we will be there eventually. Please check us out and share with your friends. We are a band of bearded brothers right now, just the two of us, but we'd like to expand. So please share with your friends and get this going, because as I said when we started, and Diesel, I know you feel the same way, we have been beating the drum on hockey, and nobody in the mainstream sports media in our country is beating that drum. And so we're going to do that for them. So if you love this sport,
I only know a handful of maybe 2 or 3 hockey podcasts, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great guys out there, but a lot of guys are either Canada focused, which is fine because they drive a lot of the national conversation here too in terms of the NHL, or they're focused to a specific team. And we want to change that. So hit us up. We bring a fresh south of the border perspective, and we'll always give it to you straight. I mean, I made 2 big predictions that could fall flat on our faces. So we'll have to see. Anyway, I hope you all have a good rest of your July 4th. That's when we're publishing the show. So if you're listening after, I hope you had a good July 4th. But until next time, all you castaways and penalty box goers and goons and fourth line grinders and everybody else, Diesel, you included, have a great rest of your week.
You as well.
All right. Thank you. Take care, buddy.